Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Folks, we want to take you to a different place of consciousness in examining the world and the way it really is. Many of you have seen these graphs, charts, pictures of the world structure being like a pyramid with at the very top you have your elites, and at the bottom are we the people, who are nothing more than their slaves. They're debt slaves, but the slaves to feed their system. Now, if you saw this chart many years ago, you may have thought, oh, those wacky conspiracy theorists, this is just crazy stuff. But as the days have unfolded and you see more and more truth come out of some of the most horrendous things ever that you could have ever faced in your whole life, you begin to see that maybe some of this stuff is true, and maybe those crazy conspiracy theorists are right. So today, in this audio, we're going to take you to that place, and we're going to ask you if you're ready to be red-pilled. I've asked Thomas to get totally unleashed with us, so if it offends you in any way, we don't mean to offend you, but we know that we have listeners out there who really want to take this at a higher level. Thomas, please explain to us how the world is really structured and set up.
Betsy, it's a beautiful thing that you've posted on Truth News Headlines, this pyramid that shows this structure you've described with we the people at the bottom and the elite at the top, and even above them, evil beings, which many people would say is a conspiracy, and then that's why they think it's completely nuts. But really, it's not at all. What I want to say is we want to give you, we the people, a gift directly out of Santa Trump's bag. Because Santa Trump, as we've just seen with the tax cuts, which is unprecedented in history, really, is going to transform America and already has just at the passage of it, let alone when it gets implemented. And so there are many, many, many presents in the bag for us down at the bottom, for Trump, who was an elite, who is basically being the opposite of an elite. He's making sure that some of the wealth at the top gets redistributed to us at the bottom instantaneously. Thousands of dollars in our pockets from tax breaks that always should have been there. That's only the beginning. Here is the real present. That's only the beginning. He's pulling out of our pathetic investments in things like the United Nations. He's pulling us out of the climate accord. He's pulled us out of bad deals all over the world. And so really, what we don't yet notice is $10 trillion is in his bag that he's already pulled out for the American people that we have enumerated, and it was taken directly from the elite. So we are getting beautiful, beautiful presents for Christmas, and coal and sticks are going into the shoes of the Rothschilds. And we're going to talk about this pyramid in more detail in just a second, but let's look at the general overview of this. The pyramid, we the people, or down at the bottom, there's more of us. We're supporting those few at the top. It has now been turned on its head. We, the people, through the weaponized internet and through citizen journalism, have become that pillar of truth that the news is supposed to be, to confront politicians, to confront evil corporate order that is basically an imperialism over the whole earth. So what we are finding is now we the people are a big heavy weight upon the elite. We turn the pyramid upside down and they are getting squished. And they're getting squished by a huge amount of force that is so great and so much greater than them, there is no way that they can possibly win.
Well, it's the 100th monkey syndrome that enough people have awakened now that we do have the force to turn it upside down.
They woke.
Yeah.
I guess that's the new phrase,
well,
right?
People say they're red-pilled or they woke.
And the red pill or blue pill, whichever one you decide to choose, that's up to you. But what we try to do with Truth News Headlines is to show you the big picture, to show you the truth, and to show you the evidence so you can construct it yourself. It doesn't do any good to hear pundits giving you completely digested thoughts which are based upon fallacious information. What good is that? That's more than a waste of your time. It doesn't do any good to actually get on Facebook unless you realize that in one single pixel on any page on Facebook could be sending you subliminal information that literally can control the narrative in your network, your brain network, or your neural network. These things are realities. We've shown you again and again through our intelligence reports so that you know that we aren't just talking off the top of our heads like so many others do. What else is in that bag? Oh, Santa Trump's bag is so filled with so many things. It's kind of like that thing that they did, the joke, too much winning, Trump is just giving us too much winning. I could go down and enumerate, I think he did recently, his administration, would they enumerate 80 things that they've done already in the first year, many of which are some of the most significant things the president has ever done. So we are winning. And Trump is like Santa Claus. He's everywhere. He's coming down everybody's chimney, not just in America, but in the whole world.
Well, for some people, that's the only level they'll see it at. They will see it as that they're getting a tax cut and they may be getting a bigger refund check. But I want to go beyond that, Thomas. I want to really we're going to move the microphone here, folks, if we make a noise. But I really want to go through this whole pyramid structure, where we have the Luciferians, Satanists, if you will, demons, archons at the very top, and how that structure controls us through the various hierarchies and levels.
Yes, I think this is one of the best ones that you've ever posted, and one of the best ones I've seen, because it shows the slaveness. It shows our slavedom. It shows our... first off, let me just point out to you, if you are not woke, sorry, I'm going to have to awaken you. You are a slave. You do not own your house. You do not own your land. You never own anything. You have to continue to pay taxes on it. And even after you die, they're going to take money. Now it's been moved up to 10, 11 million for inheritance tax, but the death tax, they actually tax you at death so your children don't get your money, okay? That's an enslavement. Do you think that the Rockefeller children don't get their money? Do you think the death tax ever applied to them? So we start off, we're the base of the pyramid. There's a lot more of us than them, and that's why we win. That's why we always win. In any kind of social transformation, any kind of political movement, it's the numbers that count, whether it's in an election, a true election, or whether it's marching on the elected officials that need to be removed. That's our job in America. So down at the bottom it says, you're in this cycle. Birth, forced education, higher, and by the way, birth, they control that. They immunize you. They poison you before you're even born. And hospitals are nothing but rigged systems to make sure you remain in a system of not health care, but illness care. Then you got forced education. It's actually a prison. I worked in it for many years. There's seldom any freedom ever happening, and less now than ever before in education. Then you go to higher education, which is rigged and a scam. We already paid for those universities. Why should my child have to pay? And why are foreigners allowed to even have higher positions in our best universities than Americans? This is evil. Why are there tenured university professors making $250,000 a year who don't even teach a course?
Well, that way they keep their liberal buddies all with jobs.
It's disgusting. We're going to be having conversation with a student in a university soon, and he's going to tell you some things that may shock you that go on, that they are taught there as if they are truth.
Thomas, let's move through our...
Sorry. Mm-hmm. And then you get your job and your career, which is based upon higher education, whether or not you went through the system
right. You have to
appropriately.
pay the system in order to get the good job so that you can then pay off your student loan for having the privilege to go to the university that's already been paid for by taxpayer dollars. It's just a form of financial enslavement.
And your job and career is taken by an immigrant, an illegal immigrant, a DACA, somebody who is coming as an HB1 worker. So what happens? They make you spend all the money so you're in debt, and then they don't give you a job. They don't even allow you to apply. Foreigners apply first and get the job because they make less money. And the bigger the company, the more awful it is. Taxes, as I said before, you don't own your land. You don't pay your taxes, they take your land. Done. You don't pay your taxes on your house, they take your house. Done. Do you own either one of them? You never own them. Who's the only one that owns anything in this country? The elite, who pay no taxes and keep their money offshore, and churches, most of whom are rigged. So when we talk about taxes, taxes are to pay the elite bankers who set up a form of credit indebtedness that we can never get out of, and the system was built that way. It was built that way from the beginning when the first central banks modeled their banks after the Vatican Central Bank. So when you talk about taxes, there's no end to that. Then comes your debts. Well, credit, okay? That's what we're talking about. Credit, I don't even have to go into that. Retirement, what retirement? You can't live on Social Security, especially if your mate dies.
All the pension funds are collapsing.
Totally rigged gambling, casino, retirement funds. It's how many times does this have to happen that the rigged unions use the retirement funds for their criminal activities? I mean, come on, that's standard operating procedure. Then there's death, and they tell you that's the end, instead of telling you that's the beginning. So I want to make this very, very clear. Once you have been enslaved by the things we just described in this cycle, and you get to death, do you have any freedom? And can you believe there's anything beyond when you, in this realm, wondered who's here to support you when all you see around you is this type of evil? So what they have by the end of death is complete hopelessness. That's what they want. They want to steal your ability to think, steal your ability to feel, steal your ability to be free.
They're stealing our ability to become full human beings. They are cutting us short by keeping us enslaved, and this is a prison planet. Now, they have many layers of control to keep everybody in check and balances just over us. You mentioned a few, and that would be the banking system, and what other kinds of things are in that middle. Now, don't get so in the weeds, Thomas, because we have written dozens of citizen intelligence reports that if you go back to our site, aimfortruth.org, you will see support everything that Thomas is saying now. But if I let him get into too many details, this will be a 3-hour audio. So surface, please.
This is the whole gig, yeah. So it's a very endless topic. So the things that keep us, all those people at the bottom, under control are false religions. And by false religions, I mean some of the ones which you consider to be standard religions, because they take away your freedom, make you feel guilty, make you feel fear, doubt, hatred, and so on and so forth, and that only they can redeem you. Complete nonsense. And there's governments. They make you feel like you're free because you get to vote every once in a while, but there's only a uniparty.
And now
Doesn't matter who you vote for.
And now we know that the elections are rigged at so many levels.
And then there's the standard indoctrination, which is coming across as the administrative's narrative, politically, or anybody's narrative that is so stuck down our throats with all of the digital devices that the indoctrination is so profound you don't know you've been indoctrinated. And that's the point of PSYOPs. Then you have the corporate media. Oh my goodness. They try to tell you what to think and make sure that you have no information to think any thought yourself. They never give you details. They never give you the reality. They give you opinion, and they try to tell you what to think instead of allow you to think. So
and include Hollywood with that as well.
Oh, Hollywood tells you how to be immoral, gives you the ideals that we're supposed to strive after. What are those? Those would be that would be aggression, murder, sex, rape. Those are the top subjects in every single movie. Almost every single movie, certainly the top movies, are all about violence and sex, the complete depredation of mankind. So once they get you neurotic by giving you too many choices and showing you insane amount of nonsense, then they completely dumb you down and make you psychotic by making you think that what's on television is real. And then they create aberrations of sex and violence, because that's what leads down the path of perdition to the 7 deadly sins. So these support systems that we think are support systems just above us, we the people,
they're oppressing systems.
They keep us in control. They keep us on the farm. They keep us good slaves. Now, I'm going to jump, because what really frees us, and as I said before, as we follow the cycle that they've set up for us, which is almost impossible to get out unless you have somebody with money helping you, when you reach death, you have complete despair. What is it that we can do to turn this pyramid upside down? Because above the things I've described, of course, are world resource control, so people who have things. And then above that, world financial control. And it gets to be a smaller number of people and a smaller number of groups. All these groups are real. The IMF, the World Bank, the central banks, all that is very real. We've talked about that. We've given explanations. These are not conspiracy theories. These are realities, and if you don't know it, study it, and you'll find it to be true. Now when you say Jekyll Island, or when you say the U.S. Federal Reserve, there's a huge amount of people who immediately know what that means. It is the opposite of what they try to make you think it is. So that's that indoctrination. Those are the false government preachings. That's all that realm just above we the people, trying to keep us in line. But if we look closely at the true controllers, it's banks, it's brokers, it's think tanks, it's the richest people, and it's these groups that people have said are conspiracy theories. I'll read a few of them. They are not. But when you say Illuminati, don't say Illuminati. You have to say the Frater Lucas, which was rewritten by the Jesuits so that Jews could enter into Masonry.
Expand on that, please.
Well...
Because we get a lot of questions from readers about Freemasonry, and I think this is a good time
I'm
to
a
do
Freemason, a top Freemason. Adam Weishaupt rewrote some existing orders based upon Jesuits telling him what to do so that he could get a form of Masonry that Jews could join, because Masons were the counterpoint to the Catholic Church. It was the hidden underground Counter-Reformation and the pagan knowledge coming out of Alexandria that had been turned into a form of morality training in the many steps, sometimes as many as 96 steps in the Memphis Mizraim Lodge, or 33 steps in the standard lodges of the Scottish and York Rites. So these things, they were underground movements, they were brotherhoods that had tremendous political power against the Pope. Now, there was a huge battle between the Knights of Malta and the Jesuits then infiltrated Masonry, and that's what really the Illuminati is. Then there's the Council of 13, the Council of 33, the Order of the Skull and Bones. There's all these different groups. Those are real groups. Some are exaggerated in their power, and others are demeaned and made small when they are huge. Let's just take the Knights of Malta. The Knights of Malta have most of the current what we call white monarchy, existing monarchy in the world, all take a vow when they join the Knights of Malta to do whatever the Pope tells them to do. They take a vow of fealty to the Pope, whoever the Pope is. Well, the Pope recently not only kicked out the head of the Jesuits, but he installed his own lieutenant from South America, who's equally as guilty of crimes as Pope Francis is, who is a terrible liberation theologist, Marxist communist. He now runs not only the Jesuits, which basically means the counter-Catholic Church. He also runs the Curia, which is the standard theological church that surrounds the Pope. But he also runs the Knights of Malta. He kicked the head of the Knights of Malta out. So now they take a personal oath of fealty. The Queen of England takes an oath of fealty to the Pope. Think this through, folks. There are Muslims, Hindus, great leaders all over the world. The richest people in the world all take a vow to the Knights of Malta.
And they don't have to be Catholic, is the point.
They do not have to be Catholic, but one thing they
it's a power
have to
structure.
Be is either powerful or rich. Mm-hmm. And that's how the Vatican Bank and the insider trading of the most powerful, richest people in the world happens. This is overt. It's out there plainly described as a charity. They do almost no charity work, and yet they're the most powerful organization on the face of the earth. What is happening to them? The Pope is now being discredited by his own Curia, by his own followers. He said so many crazy things. It's insane. He's destroying the Catholic Church, but he's doing it through the inside, through power and control. So we watch the Knights of Malta. They're being stood on their head by the fact that everyone now knows who they are, because it's no longer conspiracy theorists who say, it's the Illuminati, it's the Rothschild's family, it's the Knights of Malta, it's the Jesuits. No, it really is.
And we name names and we show places and how they figure into everything.
The number one most conflated and misunderstood conspiracy theory is of the Rothschilds. The reason it's conflated is actually deconflated. It's much worse than anyone says. Here's how it works. Go to Wikipedia. Go anywhere that you can get information. You will find out the following. There are approximately 125 central banks in the world in different countries. I think it's somewhere over 85 of them are owned by the Rothschild family. It's not a myth, folks. This is the way it works. And the 7 countries that don't have a central bank, Obama went to war with them. And now a couple of them do have central banks. Fortunately for the Rothschilds didn't get to turn it into a Rothschild central bank, but it doesn't matter because they loaned the money to the country's central bank from the beginning. So many times, even though the country owns the central bank and run it, The Rothschilds loaned them the money to start, and then the interest on that can never be paid back. So in effect, they still own it. Now, when we say Rothschilds, you're going to say, wait, there's no Rothschilds on the U.S. Federal Reserve? Yes, there are. They say that the U.S. Federal Reserve is owned by the U.S. taxpayers. That is a lie. It is a private corporation. And the ones who own it are the bankers who were sent over here by the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, the Rothschilds, you have the Lehman Brothers, you have all the 5 brokers, you have the 5 major branches of the biggest banks, 5 major biggest banks in America. Those are all the same family that have all interbred. Warburg and Morgan, J.P. Morgan, were both clerks for Rothschild. But somehow magically in the ship from England to America, they magically got millions of dollars, and when they arrived here, they opened up banks with huge amounts of assets. That was the Rothschilds. So the Rothschilds did it a little more secretively here in America, but it's the same families, and it is the Rothschilds, if you look very, very closely, because they actually own major parts through their asset management companies and their limited liability companies and all these 20 different names for Blackstone. That's the Rothschilds. Okay, so when you look into who owns it, it really is them. So when you say the Illuminati, you're actually saying the Zionists. When you're saying the Rothschilds, you're saying all the big bankers. When you're saying the Jewish cabal, and there's many names for it, but when you're talking about the Zionist bankers, you're talking about the 5 brokers and bankers in America that run our entire economy. So they are right now being exposed because what they've done with buying into the stock market. 30% of the central bank's wealth is in the stock market, and it's all fake. So they are now so deeply involved. For instance, the $20 trillion we owe the U.S. Federal Reserve, we don't owe any of that. We can simply default on that. They're a private corporation.
Yeah, they're private corporations. Too bad. You invested in America and you screwed up. You didn't give us a good product, and we just say, sorry, we're not paying it back.
And it's no longer Ron Paul and Rand Paul, the only 2 people in America saying audit the Fed.
Right.
We have millions of people who know that this must be done. They know the path that can be taken, and so Trump knows the path. His administration knows the path. They can't do it too quickly, too overtly.
Well, there's so many people, Thomas, that are not awake. So our job, if you're listening to this, is do what you can to wake up people at whatever level they're at. Remember, they have been brainwashed and programmed for a long time, so you don't want to do it too quickly, but you want to be persistent.
Now, you might ask, how is it we turn the pyramid upside down and start squishing Rothschild bankers, central banks?
Yeah, that's what we want to know.
How is this going to happen?
Take them down, Thomas.
It's because of the exact opposite of that cycle of birth and death hopelessness that is created by these people, that they indoctrinate you to believe that only materialism exists and you have to grab just like them and you have to go up that pyramid until you have everything. Guess what they have at the top of the pyramid? Nothing.
They have to take the blood of children and babies to live on. I mean, it's just disgusting.
Now, you say that and people might freak out, but we now know that openly they do blood transfusions of the youngest children that they can get.
We know they're using aborted baby parts for their epithelia cells, for immortality. I mean, this is no secret anymore. People know these things.
And there's reasons for this, is because when you're that wealthy and you have no morality, and you really do worship materialism, mammon, which is Satan, which is money.
All the money in your world. The only thing you don't have is life.
And therefore you fear death. Christians don't fear death. In their religion, Christ conquered death. They don't die. They go on. The people at the top of this pyramid that are now turned upside down and being squished are being squished because we, the people, do not fear them. We don't have to have the path of perdition that they've followed into their horrifying consumptive greed until all they can do is desire more, longer life so they can get more, so they can be afraid of death and never face death because they don't have any morality to see across the threshold of death, to see that there's a spiritual world and you live after death. I'm not afraid of death, and somebody threatening me with death means nothing to me. I'm happy to go to heaven. Look, if you believe in heaven, death is a great doorway to go through.
The thing that turns it around, Thomas, the way I see it, is the virtues. When we can become virtuous in all that we say and do, that begins to turn this around. And one virtue that I'm seeing here is just the very bringing law and order back to our country. We have the laws written. We just have to follow them. You know, if people weren't blackmailed for things that they shouldn't be doing, if they were virtuous, then we wouldn't be in the position with many of our politicians.
So true. And that's what Trump is bringing, is the rule of law and virtuousness. He's bringing the fact that they can't condemn him of anything and make it stick because he didn't do anything. He actually went up that ladder mostly morally. Now, egotistically, admittedly, as a capitalist, admittedly, even as a materialist, partially, but he's also spiritual, and he believes in morality, and he believes in people. The Rothschilds and the elites and all these groups we've named, they don't believe in that. They believe they need to kill people so that they have a bigger earth and a bigger domain for them to rule without the low caste people at the bottom of the pyramid getting in their way. But what they don't know is those people have happiness and they don't. When have you ever seen a Rothschild laughing about anything but evil?
Well, you never see them, Thomas.
Well, you see them now and then, and people say that when they look at them, they see lizard people. That's true. They live in their cerebellum. They don't go into spiritual thought. They don't go into higher feeling. They're all willpower, all materialism. That's Satan. It says you are born to your father, the devil. This is the realm of Satan. This is the realm where death rules. In heaven, there's no death. So, if you don't fear death, then you know this isn't your real realm. You know that you go beyond this. Now, here is the issue and why we know that the pyramid has been turned upside down. The patriarchal system that's been going on since 2101 BC, that made the matriarchal system, which had no name for wars. They had no shields or spears or anything except what they used for killing animals. These matriarchal cultures that existed ubiquitously throughout the world, these great goddess cultures who believed in the goddess of birth, death, and rebirth, because they looked at a woman and they said, hello, the only reason we survive is because women birth children. Oh, but then that child can die. Oh, but then the woman can birth another child. There you go. That's the beginning of religion. Birth, death, and rebirth. And women began speech. So it goes back to the fact that when the patriarchal system came in and war was begun and walls were built and weapons were created, women were subjugated. So now we're seeing a complete transformation of gender equality in America, but we still see countries who don't allow women to be free. And that's why Trump said human trafficking or human violations, human civil violations. If you don't allow women to vote and you don't allow women to be citizens and you allow women in some countries to only have the designation lower than animals called chattel, you're just a belonging.
Well, what we're seeing in the world is a patriarchy that's gone wild. And the end result is no creativity, no life. It has become this satanic.
Well, they worship Satan whether people believe it or not. And when people start talking about sacrificing humans and so forth, hello, we've been sacrificing humans since the patriarchy began. That is why the story of Abraham and Isaac is told, and why that's the great transformation moment when human sacrifice is given up. An animal sacrifice replaced it, and then later animal sacrifice was given up, and you just do a ritual called the Holy Eucharist. And blood and a body is literally given up and eaten. And so we see the elements of cannibalism everywhere. So for people to freak out when they think that there are, in the Bohemian Grove, they're worshiping the owl god Moloch and they're doing a mock human sacrifice, all masonry is based upon the fact that the master mason is killed and brought back to life. The only problem with Satanists is they don't bring them back to life. They steal their life. That's what it's all about. These are ritual sacrifices. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's say you're a rich billionaire. You're George Soros, and you are allowed now to take blood from someone who's 18 years old. Oh, but George Soros goes and takes it from a 7-year-old. Three 7-year-olds. Hang on, let me say this. Okay. He takes it from 3 7-year-olds. What does he effectively do? Steal their life. This is human sacrifice. These are vampires. So when we say the Illuminati are vampires, someone would say, okay, enough of this, I'm unsubscribing. Incorrect. Look closely. That is true. The Jesuits have been at the beginning of most wars. Many times they have fomented the war. Oftentimes they were the cause of the war. So when you want to say the Illuminati the Jesuits, the Catholic Church, have murdered millions of people, you have to say that is true. 9 million witches alone, let alone the people they killed because they wouldn't convert, let alone the 12 Crusades, let alone what goes on to this very day. So what we're saying here is these are very real things, whether you want to think they are real or not. There are spiritual forces, and even the most evil people, the most powerful elite in the world at the top of this pyramid, believe that. But they believe in the dark forces, not the light forces. But the ultimate winner here is the following. We, the people, when we turn the pyramid upside down because we have awakened, because we have, as citizen journalists, spread the word and truth rings out and stops the post-truth age, the political falsehood age, when fake news comes to an end, what happens? We destroy the spiritual inspiration for the elite. We kill Satan, Lucifer, whatever you want to call this person,
we begin
Mephistopheles.
to live virtuous lives.
The virtuousness of the people at the bottom of the pyramid squish the immorality of the people at the top through bringing truth to light. That's all it takes. This is the season of light. All it takes is this little tiny infant being born, who then becomes the king of the world and turns the earth into a star. And that's the whole point. The point of there were well over a dozen world religions that worshipped a Savior who was born on December 22nd, the winter solstice, who then became the Messiah of that religion. Or else in the Celtic faith, for example, also, you have that the king who is elected for the year, as long as there's a good harvest, the king lives. If there's a bad harvest, they put him in a wicker tower and burn him to death and get a new king that they establish by choosing the child who was born on December 20, closest to the solstice. So after the very moment of the solstice, the first male child born was made the king. So when we're talking about the spirit of the light of Christmas, what we're actually talking about is a belief that goes back to the ubiquitous mother cults who worshipped the cycles of the year. And they knew through birth cycles, because they were in charge of birthing, they were in charge of watching the moon cycles. That's how the first calendars were all established, through women's menstrual cycles, the moon cycles. It was all about basically knowing who was to be born and acknowledging them. So when you look out upon physical nature, you see that nature is dying at this time of the year, and it looks like we're getting darker.
Unless you're down under. Because our friends down in New Zealand and Australia are...
Sorry, Helen.
And Anne and all of our great friends, Peter, down there.
Take what we're saying, reverse it, stand on your head, and you'll have the same experience. So what really happens is, in ancient times, people were scared to death. The days were getting shorter, nights were getting longer. There was less and less sun. The sun seemed to be going out every day from the time that the fall equinox happened. So it gets shorter and shorter until they get so dark that it's almost as if you're living in darkness. And then what happens? A miracle happens. For some reason, and the ancients didn't know why, the days started getting longer. The sun came back. So the sun was kind of going away, going somewhere, and then at a moment it turned at a turning point and started to grow light again, and they rejoiced because then the sun was coming back and they could be warm again, they could plant, and they could live. So this is for the people in the temperate climates, of course, not, of course, the equator. And as Betsy has pointed out, down there in the down under world, it's completely the opposite.
But Thomas, this is metaphorical for our culture and our times that we're in. For many people who are listening to us, it is a dark time for them. They see the loss of their country, perhaps even their personal lives have become very dark. There is no hope. And what we're saying is the light has come.
Yes, and it's the birth of light. And when you're looking at that moment from the darkest day of the year, and then it starts to grow light, you're looking at a threshold between dark and light. Now, this threshold can also be an analogy for the threshold between the physical and spiritual world. And that threshold is what humanity has now, because of evolution, been pulled across. Humanity as a whole, anyone who is awake, is looking at the fact that they are at that threshold, they're being pulled across it, and that makes you see yourself, your thinking, feeling, and willing, because you're a threefold being. You start to see that as fear, doubt, and hatred. So if you got a lot of fear, doubt, and hatred, and you're like an elite, and you're standing at the threshold of this time, you are so scared, and you're so scared of death, that all you can do is perpetrate fear, doubt, and hate. But if you're a good, pious Christian who hasn't followed the path of the 7 deadly sins, but followed the path of the living virtues, then you're not afraid to cross that threshold. And humanity as a whole being pulled across the threshold of death, because really, death is everywhere now. It could be in your food, it's in your vaccinations, it's in North Korea.
It's in the air with the chemtrails.
It's in chemtrails, it's in your water, it's poisons everywhere,
but
folks.
That's what they want to do. They need to kill us because we're waking up too quickly.
And they need to depopulate. They need to get rid of a lot of us.
Depopulation killing us.
You can bet that the Rothschilds, and we know this, we also know that the royalty of England, they eat only organic food. And their children do not go onto Facebook because it is killing people. Literally. It is evil. It is creating psychosis. And now this is being admitted every day in the news, that Facebook was set up as a psyop to try to use electronic dopamine stimulation to get you addicted to the machine and away from humans. That's called stage 2, indoctrination. So how do we win the battle? It's very simple. Those of us who stand at the threshold and take everyone to the threshold to wake up, because that's what truth does. Self-knowledge wakes us up. Truth is self-knowledge. If we can wake up the world, we are fine, but the elite aren't. And we stand them on their head because we basically say, ha, ha, ha. You didn't know about karma. Ho, ho, ho. You didn't know that there was a spiritual world. Season's greetings. You're going to hell. This is the good news, folks. We poor people who have some morality, we aren't afraid of death. And so all there is right now is just the treats. I'm seeing treats everywhere. Sugar plum fairies dancing everywhere, because everywhere the elite, what many call the deep state or the shadow government, all over the world, that human traffickers and pedophiles and criminals, and we can go into all the way that Santa Trump did this with his new executive orders and standing up for the rule of law. But the point is that there are a whole bunch of swamp creatures that got sticks and coals. And there's a whole bunch of us good people who, through truth, we are liberated from a cycle of indoctrination and control that would like to keep us as slaves on the farm. But the truth will set us free. And as we have pointed out in all of our intelligence reports and in most of our talks, it's easy. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. You know what you have to do to a giant to take him down? Cut his Achilles tendon. The simplest thing, all you have to do is to take a person down in martial arts is walk up and take your foot and put it on their Achilles tendon and scrape it downwards. No matter who they are, they fall to the ground and they can't get up and walk. That's how easy it is to take the Rothschilds down. Have you noticed what's been happening to the Rothschilds? They're selling out. They came out and told all of us to buy gold when gold is going down. They try to manipulate the markets. Another elite like Jamie Dimon comes out and says, don't buy Bitcoin, then buys Bitcoin. Tells you don't buy silver, and then buy silver. Don't listen to the elite. Remember, the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, the Bohemian Grove, all of them, the Council on Foreign Relations, all of them even before Trump was elected, said they were at their rope's end. If Trump gets elected, they have no plans. Their plans are destroyed. I'm here to tell you with Betsy today, they are defeated. They're defeated because if you understand what we just told you, you defeated them with your consciousness, because Satan, if there is a Satan, folks, then there's a God. And if Satan rules by dark thoughts, then God rules by thoughts of light. And so in this Christmas holiday season, we want to thank Trump for coming down the chimney with his whole bag of gifts for us who are moral. And we want to thank his little helper, Rupert, or as he's called, he's got many different names, who goes around with a switch and switches the bad people and puts coal and sticks. He actually travels around with St. Nicholas, of course. He's got many names. But the point is, this is the season when karma is coming to bear. And because these elitists, and because Satan himself doesn't even know there is karma, and Mephistopheles, whoever you want to call the evil beings, if you even call them bad thoughts, lower self, call them your animal desires, call them whatever you want. But they are a conscious entity, and people do get possessed by them. And those are the elites. And they are going to die because the rest of the world knows who a Bill Gates is. Bill Gates attempts to kill all of Africa with his vaccines that have sterilization in them.
And we know
has been
who
called
Eric
out.
Schmidt is.
Eric Schmidt, the evil guy who wants to
Yes.
build a robot army. Hello? We know who Mark Dude Zuckerberg is. He
Yeah.
doesn't know how to write code.
Right.
He did not create Facebook. We know where the Silicon Valley Boy King cardboard cutouts come from. They come from stealing Leader Technologies' ideas and, some patents, some copyrights, and other things.
Well, let's not go down there, because we know that there's a lot of theft of that kind in D.C.
But what we see is that the common people down at the bottom, for the first time ever, didn't have to wait for trickle-down economics or anything else. Trump said, "Merry Christmas. Here's thousands of dollars in your pocket. Good luck, Democrats." So I also want to thank Trump for just showing us that Christianity needs to come back to America, and that Sharia law cannot be allowed, and that to mention Christ in Christmas is okay, because believe it or not, the founding fathers believed in God. They did not believe in Allah. They did not believe in anyone but a Christian God. You don't have to be a Christian to be America, but you cannot wipe out the historical roots of America.
Well, in closing, I would like you to speak to our brothers and sisters around the world, because this is not just an American problem, and it's going to take more than Americans to bring down the system and create new solutions.
Betsy, all of my life, when I traveled throughout the world, people hated Americans. And particularly, they would talk about what American politicians did. And now, as I travel around, when I speak to people, I have never seen anyone turn that corner and say America is great, let alone that they have dropped the memory of the crimes that America has committed against the world. And so I just want to say this is the greatest season of hope. We get to see not only morality be placed back upon the throne of American democracy, but we get to see a moral person in the White House, which we haven't seen for decades and decades. So I just want to say the whole world gets to benefit from this. This isn't about just America. America's reach goes out to the entire world. We broadcast to the entire world our propaganda. And now that we have someone who's going to stop the propaganda, who's going to stop the corporatocracy, the imperialism of the corporations in America, and stop the United Nations control of the world, I believe that the greatest hope that we've seen coming from America is happening now, and that it is as great as at the moment when George Washington was made the first president of the United States. And I draw that analogy to Santa Donald Trump, as he is bringing to us the gifts that we have wanted for so long. And I am certain that each Christmas hereafter will bring us even more gifts. So thank you to the spiritual world, who has turned the pyramid upside down and squished the elites and squishing them more every day. And thank you for those of you who put Donald Trump in the White House. Let's keep sending him our prayers to make sure that he is preserved along with the democracy, the U.S. Constitution, and the U.S. Bill of Rights.